Something Queer in Outer Space by Elizabeth Levy, illustrated by Mordicai Gerstein. All right. And a user named Watermelon said that they liked these books, and so I wanted to buy some more, and so I got some from the thrift store so that I could read some more. "Can Fletcher eat salami in space?" asked Jill. Fletcher opened both eyes at the word salami. "A reconstituted salami," said Colonel Castle. Fletcher closed his eyes. Fang gave a high-pitched bark. "He probably likes reconstituted salami," said Gwen. "Fang's a very light eater," said Willie. Fletcher did something he almost never did. Ever did. From deep in his belly, he let out a low, menacing growl. "Fletcher doesn't like light eaters," exclaimed Jill. "This is actual salami. This is reconstituted salami. Note, most space food is reconstituted, which means add water. Reconstituted." As soon as summer vacation began, Gwen, Jill, and Fletcher flew to Houston to begin Fletcher's training. At the Space Center, Colonel Castle led them to a training room. Fang was on a treadmill. The little dog's legs were going as fast as they could. "Good job, Fang," said Colonel Castle. This is Riza and Willie. Jill tied a piece of salami to the front of the treadmill for Fletcher, and Colonel Castle set the speed to medium. Here's the salami. Medium. After a while, everybody heard panting. The treadmill was going so fast, poor Fletcher could barely keep up. Jill turned off his machine. Fletcher lay down, exhausted. "Fletcher thinks running is for people, not dogs," she explained. Gwen studied the speed control on Fletcher's machine. It was on high. "Who turned up Fletcher's treadmill?" she asked, tapping her braces. Gwen always tapped her braces when something queer was going on. "Do you have something in your teeth?" asked Willie. This is the close-up of the control, which is marked high now. Remember, it was marked medium. The next day, Colonel Castle and Miss Watsuda put Fletcher in the anti-gravity chamber. "May we try it?" asked Gwen. Miss Watsuda smiled. "Why not?" "Wow," said Gwen as she rolled up the wall. "I can do a double somersault," said Jill. She held Fletcher up with one finger. The door to the anti-gravity chamber opened. Riza and Fang entered. Fang wasn't wearing his muzzle. Fang bared his teeth and tried to bite Fletcher. "Stop, Fang," shrieked Riza. Jill grabbed a Velcro leash from the side of the chamber. She got the leash on Fletcher and pulled him out of the way of Fang's teeth. Once they were safely out, Gwen yelled at Riza. "Fletcher could have been killed." "Well, I don't know you were in there," said Riza. "The sign on the chamber says empty." Gwen tapped her braces. First the treadmill, then someone put the wrong sign. Tap, 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 tap. That's the tapping. Now, said Colonel Castle. "These little snafus happen. Take it from me." "Colonel Castle should know," said Miss Watsuda. "He was in training to be the next astronaut in space before they decided to use a dog instead." Colonel Castle put his arm around Gwen. "Don't you worry. I'll look into these glitches." Fletcher did extremely well on the eating part of his training. He definitely loved space ice cream and learned to take the foil off for himself. However, he still didn't like space salami. It was too bland. Note, space ice cream is freeze-dried, so it does not have to be kept in a freezer. It's not cold. Fletcher made rapid progress in his other training, too. I never thought you'd whip that fat dog into shape, the chief engineer said to Colonel Castle. Jill frowned. She didn't like Fletcher being called that fat dog. Finally, the day of Fletcher's launch arrived. Television crews from around the world came to meet the dog who looked like the planet Earth and was going into space. He looks like he's asleep, said one of the reporters. Deep down, he's very excited, said Jill. Miss Watsuda helped put Fletcher in the space capsule, and Jill gave him a kiss on the nose. The door to the space capsule closed. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have blast off, shouted the chief engineer. Jill held on to Gwen's hand as the rocket climbed through the clouds. And this is counting from 10 down to 1 in different languages around here. And there's Fletcher. Gwen and Jill watched Fletcher on the monitor. His ears, no longer pulled down by gravity, floated out to the side like two flying carpets. Fletcher looked down and saw the boot of Italy and the coast of North Africa. They looked exactly like his right ear, except Italy was green and brown and the Mediterranean Sea was blue. He looked up and saw the day turning to night. The Milky Way looked close enough to lick. Jill and Gwen spoke to Fletcher through their headsets. "You're passing Turkey," said Jill. Fletcher wagged his tail. "He likes countries that sound like food," Jill explained to the reporter. "This is Turkey, the country. This is his tail wagging." "Uh-oh," said the chief engineer. The entire room grew quiet. Uh-oh was the scariest word in the space program. "What's wrong?" asked Jill. "I'm getting a weird reading from the medical sensors. There's another life form in the space capsule." "An alien!" shrieked Jill. Fletcher whimpered. Gwen tapped her braces. High-pitched sounds came through space. "Yip, yip, 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 yip," went the alien. "Tap, tap, 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 tap," went Gwen. She pointed to the sleeping bag. "It's lumpy," she shouted. "So Fletcher didn't make the bed," said Colonel Castle. The chief engineer chuckled. Gwen didn't think it was funny. Yip, 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 yip. Speakers for sounds from the capsule. Oh, these are wall speakers. Tap, 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 tap. Lumpy sleeping bag. "Well, we're getting 2 heartbeats. Strange noises," said the chief engineer. Jill shuddered. Gwen put her arm around her. The space capsule hurtled through the night. Children in Singapore, Kyoto, and Perth turned on their lights as a way of saying hello to Fletcher. But Fletcher wasn't looking out the window or thinking about food. His eyes were glued to the sleeping bag. It was twitching. Every time the alien yipped or yapped, Gwen tapped. Yip tap, yipped, yip tap. It drove everybody crazy, and finally Gwen looked around. Where's Fang?" she asked. Yip tap, 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 yip tap. He's in his room," said Willie, "right below the command center." "I think we'd better check," said Gwen. Everything in Fang's room was in place except Fang's leash and muzzle. And Fang. "Where is he?" This is the close-up of the Velcro hooks. Leash, Velcro. Muzzle, Velcro. "I think I know," said Gwen. "We've got to get back to the command center." Back upstairs, everyone was staring at the screen. A growling, snarling Fang popped out of the sleeping bag. Not wearing a muzzle, he snapped his sharp little teeth at Fletcher. Fletcher floated out of reach. "How did Fang get in there?" shouted the chief engineer, looking directly at Willie and Riza. "It wasn't Riza or me," said Willie. "I know," said Gwen. "What do do you mean? Shrieked Jill. Willie and Riza have been trying to sabotage Fletcher's mission since day one. Gwen shook her head. No, you're wrong. But we can't deal with that now. We gotta save Fletcher. Tell Fang to stay, Gwen yelled at Willie. Stay, Fang, commanded Willie. Oh, we'll never keep those two dogs apart, moaned Colonel Castle. They hate each other. With Willie on the headset to Fang and Jill talking to Fletcher, those two dogs won't hurt each other, said Gwen. Oh, yeah? Said the chief engineer. What about re-entry? The outside of the space capsule gets so hot, all radio communication and transmissions are cut. They'll kill each other, said Jill and Willie. The sun rose over California while Jill and Willie stayed on their headsets talking to Fang and Fletcher, telling them to keep apart. Gwen slowly circled the command center, tapping her braces. She got down on all fours. Stop being silly, pleaded Jill. We're really scared about Fletcher's re-entry. I'm not being silly, said Gwen. Now I'm solving the mystery. We have to fire the retro rockets, said the chief engineer, and the air around the capsule glowed a fiery pink as it slammed back into the Earth's atmosphere. Then the screen went blank, and the earphones went dead. The TV screen was nothing but streaks of black and white. Oh, that's probably dog fur, said Willie formally. Fletcher just didn't have enough training. He's panicking, said Colonel Castle. Not enough training? Or does he have an enemy in space? Interrupted Gwen. Gwen, whispered Jill, you're talking to an astronaut. An astronaut, but not a nice man, said Gwen, tapping her braces. What are you talking about? Asked the chief engineer. Something queer in outer space, shouted Gwen, and it started right down here on Earth. She's just a little girl, protested Colonel Castle, laughing. The chief engineer wasn't smiling. Go on, Gwen, he said. At first I thought it was Willie and Riza. Then I thought it could be you, the chief engineer looked shocked. You thought Fletcher was too fat for space, continued Gwen. Fang can't go anywhere without his muzzle, explained Gwen, except with Willie and Riza. Colonel Castle used a muzzle to put him in the space capsule sleeping bag, and then he took the muzzle off so that Fang would scare Fletcher and ruin his mission. I think she's left her brain floating in the anti-gravity chamber, chuckled Colonel Castle. Then how do you account for Fang's dog fur on your crisp, clean uniform? Magnified view of Fang's hair, said Gwen, holding up a strand of Fang's long, sleek fur that she had found on Colonel Castle's pant legs. Space belongs to people, not dogs or little girls. I order you kids out of this command center, shouted Colonel Castle. Jill looked up at the screen. I can't leave Fletcher, she wailed. Get out now, commanded Colonel Castle. He lunged for Gwen. Gwen ducked under the computers. Stop it, John, shouted Miss Watsuda. Suddenly everybody heard a munching sound. It sounds like someone's been chewed to death, said the chief engineer, listening on his earphones to the sound from the space capsule. Oh, Fletcher, wailed Jill. Fang's eating him. Or vice versa, sniffed Riza. The picture cleared. What the? Exclaimed the chief engineer. Fletcher and Fang were both wagging their tails and chewing something, but it wasn't each other. Fletcher, cried Jill. Fang, cried Willie. What are they eating? Demanded Gwen, tapping her braces. The camera zoomed out. It's salami, said Gwen. Real salami. Did you put that there, Jill? Jill shook her head. How did Fletcher get salami in space? Asked Jill. Gwen started to tap her braces. A planet made of salami? And this is a salami planet with a bagel moon, seeded roll moon, rings of mustard and pickle slices. Riza giggled softly. I felt sorry for Fletcher, she whispered. Having to go up into space without real salami. Oh, those dogs should never have gone up in the first place, muttered Colonel Castle. That's why I sneaked Fang in. I wanted to show everybody what a disaster it would be. John, said Miss Westsuda, you've got it all wrong. Space is big enough for animals and people. Colonel Castle flashed a dirty look at Gwen and stomped out of the command center. Gwen looked up into space. The parachute had opened. Fletcher and Fang flipped and floated and did a fandango back to Earth. The fandango is a fiery Spanish dance. Olé! Tap, 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 tap. How did they go up as enemies and come down as friends? Asked Jill in an awed voice. Gwen tapped her braces, but she was stumped. Some mysteries in space were too deep, even for Gwen. Tap, 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 tap. All right. I think there were several missing pages at the beginning. I might not be right, but I don't know. All right. Good night. I love you.